This video is going to apply to Infiniti QX56 QX80 from 2011 to 2024 and Nissan Armada from 2017 to 2024. We're going to open up right here the high pressure fuel pump. We're going to take a look at the high pressure fuel pump lifter bucket and see how it's doing. I replaced it 55,000 miles ago when I was in here last time. These QXs had an early problem like 2011, like 2013, 14, around there, where the lifter bucket was getting worn through by the camshaft, and it would release particles of metal into your fuel system, into your engine. It would just be a whole big problem. And I had no wear on my lifter bucket when I opened it up at 100,000 because it was replaced during a timing chain recall by Infiniti. But I want to check on it, see how it's doing, see if there's any wear over the last 55,000 miles, because I believe that there is an oil hole. And if that oil hole, it's very small. If it gets clogged, that can be what starts the snowball. So we're going to check on that. We're going to clean that hole as well. All right, I'm going to come over here, loosen this 10 millimeter nut over here, and I'm going to disconnect the negative cable from the battery. Then we're going to come back here. We're going to take the lid off of this relay box. There's just some covers on the side you have to squeeze. And then you can see it's going to tell you what everything is. At the top here, you can see 15 amp fuel pump. We're going to pull that fuse. Next, we're going to come to this relay box, take its cover off, and then you pull this side box up a little bit. There's like some tabs on the side. And you're going to see that the F20 location is labeled as fuel pump. So that is this 15 amp fuse right there. So we're going to pull that one. Now I'm going to reconnect the negative battery cable, and we're going to try starting the car. Okay, it started up. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to try starting it again. Let's try starting it again. Nope, it sputtered. Let's try it again. And you can see it will not start. So it is interesting that it'll start maybe once or two times, but then eventually it won't start anymore. And so that's what we're looking for. We're removing that pressure, that fuel line pressure. So now when we open up the high pressure fuel pump container, nothing's gonna spray out at us. So we can disconnect the negative battery cable again, and that's just gonna stay disconnected until we're done with the repair. Let's remove the airbox all the way up to the throttle body. I'm going to start by disconnecting this wire harness here. And then that wire harness comes down here and connects to the airbox. I'm just going to disconnect it from the airbox with a pry tool. Next, we've got three 10 millimeter bolts. One here, one there, and one down there. 8 millimeter worm drive hose clamp. Right there. You can loosen that hose. And then all we need to do now is remove any kind of hoses and electrical connections that are attaching to the airbox. So we'll start by squeezing these clamps on this clamp, squeezing these ears on this clamp, sliding it backwards, and then we'll be able to pull this PCV hose off of here. Looks like we'll take off this one as well, and we'll unplug this wiring harness right there. So let's start with those. Okay, so there's that hose off, and I just pulled it out of this little holder here. Pulled that hose off. Now let's come around to this side. You've got your, let me turn on another light. You've got this hose coming up from the front diff. This is the front diff breather. It's really nice how Nissan runs it so high. So like if you ever did do a water crossing, all you gotta do is squeeze that little piece of plastic in there, that retainer, that clip with some needle nose pliers and push it out of its holder on the airbox. And then you've got this hose right here to disconnect from this metal pipe. Then on the back of this box, you've got another hose right here, air hose, to disconnect. Okay, so now you can pull back on this accordion hose and you can lift everything out of place. Now, because I have this catch can, this is gonna look a little differently, this hose routing than your vehicle probably, but it's gonna be very similar. You can see I've got this PCV hose coming up over the intake manifold. So I need to get that out of the way. So I'm just gonna disconnect the hose clamps right here and let's remove the airbox all the way up to the throttle body. I'm gonna start by disconnecting this wire harness here. And then that wire harness comes down here and connects to the airbox. I'm just gonna disconnect it from the airbox with a pry tool. Next, we've got 3 10mm bolts. One here, one there, and one down there. 8mm worm drive hose clamp right there. You can loosen that hose. And then all we need to do now is remove any kind of hoses and electrical connections that are attaching to the airbox. So we'll start by squeezing these clamps on this clamp, squeezing these ears on this clamp, sliding it backwards, and then we'll be able to pull this PCV hose off of here. Looks like we'll take off this one as well, and we'll unplug this wiring harness right there. So let's start with those. Okay, so there's that hose off, and I just pulled it out of this little holder here, pulled that hose off. Now let's come around to this side. You've got your, let me turn on another light. You've got this hose coming up from the front diff. This is the front diff breather. It's really nice how Nissan runs it so high. So like if you ever did do a water crossing, all you gotta do is squeeze that little piece of plastic in there, that retainer, that clip with some needle nose pliers and push it out of its holder on the airbox. And then you've got this hose right here to disconnect from this metal pipe. Then on the back of this box, you've got another hose right here, air hose, to disconnect. Okay, so now you can pull back on this accordion hose and you can lift everything out of place. Now, because I have this catch can, this is gonna look a little differently, this hose routing than your vehicle probably, but it's gonna be very similar. You can see I've got this PCV hose coming up over the intake manifold. So I need to get that out of the way. So I'm just gonna disconnect the hose clamps right here and take it off of the PCV valve on the driver's side of the engine. So while we're talking about the PCV hose, you have 2 PCV valves, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side of the engine. If your vehicle has over like 100,000 miles or more and these have never been changed, I would recommend at least taking them out and inspecting them. You want to be able to shake it back and forth and hear the valve in there. It's like a little check ball rattling around. If it doesn't do anything, it's because it's clogged up with oil. And you can try cleaning it with like some carb cleaner or brake cleaner, or you can just buy a new one. You know, maybe every 100,000 miles, replace the 2 PCV valves. I did this one 55,000 miles ago, so I'm really not that worried about it. I'll link to these in the description. I'll link to everything in the description so you don't have to sit here and memorize or write down part numbers. And also, by the way, if you're gonna take this out, it requires a 23mm wrench, which is kind of a weird size. Not every toolkit has a 23mm. And then on the driver's side of the engine, the PCV is behind this wiring harness right here, where this air hose comes into, right behind this wiring harness. There it is, right there. If the PCV valves get all gummed up, then more oil mist is getting inside of the intake manifold, which is just going to exacerbate the problem of the gunk and the carbon building up on the back of the intake valves. Okay, so I took the PCV valve out, shake it, I hear nothing. Barely, nothing. So we got to clean this out or replace it. Okay, let's clean this thing out. You could use carb cleaner, brake cleaner, throttle body cleaner, any kind of solvent basically. Shake it around. There, can you hear that ball now in there? So there we go. We're starting to free it up. You can see this check valve moves freely now, not all gunked up. You can see I can push on it. It springs back into a position when I let it go. That's what you want. When you're reinstalling the PCV valves, don't go crazy with the torque. Just get them snug because you're going into plastic, so you don't want to risk cracking anything. I've got a 10mm bolt that I use to hold on my catch cam, but that won't apply to you. But you just want to check around and see if you have any PCV hoses that are going to be in your way connecting to the manifold, that when you want to pull the manifold off, it's going to hang everything up. So just disconnect those. So I've got this one disconnected, and you can see I've got a hose running over here, and it comes to that one, so I got to disconnect that one. You can see I've got all those PCV hoses just tucked off to the side there. You want to be careful that when you remove this intake manifold, no dirt is going to fall down into the cylinder. So maybe before starting all this, I should have said, maybe give your engine a wash. There's really no big secret to cleaning an engine. The thing that I do to avoid any problems, you see any kind of electrical connector, I cover it up with aluminum foil. I just take a little piece of aluminum foil, cover up every electrical connector, spray on degreaser, and then I use a garden hose, but I don't use it on jet. I just use it on shower. A low pressure setting, clean everything off. You can hit it with a bristle brush. If dirt's not coming off, you just need more degreaser, a bristle brush, and do it again. I much prefer to clean an engine that way than with a pressure washer or even a garden hose set to like the jet setting. You can risk getting water in places where water's not supposed to go. So I take, it doesn't take long, an extra minute, cover up everything with aluminum foil, and then just not hardcore pressure on the hose, and you will avoid any kind of problem. So maybe clean up all around down here where the intake manifold is going to separate. Just get as much loose dust and dirt out of there. Now, we do need to make a decision on the throttle body. There's a couple different ways you could go about this. You could leave the throttle body attached to the intake manifold. The downside with that is that you're going to need to disconnect these two coolant hose connections down here, which means you're going to lose some coolant dripping out. So you need to have a pan down below. Alternatively, what you could do is remove these 4 bolts from the face of the throttle body, and it'll unbolt from the intake manifold, and you can just leave it hanging down here. And then you won't need to mess with that. The downside with that is that you need to most likely get a new throttle body gasket for this connection right here. Since I'm going to be working on the cooling system anyways, I'm going to go with the option to undo those 2 hoses because I don't have a replacement gasket on hand for the throttle body. Okay, a little bit of coolant came out, not much at all. And we got to disconnect this wire harness to the throttle body. Now, I know you're going to be tempted to clean your throttle body, and that's great. You should do that with some throttle body cleaner, just spray it around in there. But modern vehicles, a lot of them, if you manually move the throttle plate, like if you open it up with your fingers to clean further in, it can kind of mess things up. It can actually ruin the throttle bodies. I don't know if that's the case with this vehicle, so I would just avoid that. I would just spray on the outside. You'll get a little bit. If you happen to have chosen the other option of disconnecting the throttle body, then you could spray it from the inside. But on a lot of modern cars, there's like gears in here, and if they're not actuated electronically, they can strip out. So now with that, we are ready to remove the intake manifold. The only thing we have left are the 10 bolts holding the manifold down. So if you come and peek in here, these silver bolts, there's one right there, there's one right there, there's one right there, one there, and one at the very back. So the driver's side, they're all easy to get to. On the passenger side, the very back one is going to be the most challenging, so I'd recommend you start with that one. Yeah, so there's a ton of stuff in the way to get to that back bolt. Now the key to getting that one out is getting all of this stuff out of your way. We do not need to remove these heater hoses, but we need to be able just to kind of flex them, move them out of our way. So same with all of this wiring. So what you can do is disconnect the connections that this wiring harness is attached to so that it has more movement in it. So you can disconnect that 10mm bolt. There is a probably a wire clip right here to this bracket. I already cut mine and now it's been replaced by a zip tie, so I'm gonna remove that. You've got this band on the heater hoses. You can unclip that. You just need to get a flat screwdriver in here where it clips together, and that'll give you some more flexibility. You've got another one right there. You just get a flathead screwdriver in there to pop this band. That'll allow your heater hoses to be pushed back out of the way when you're trying to get to that bolt. You've got a bolt right there that holds this bracket on. If it's still in your way, you can remove the bracket entirely. And then this main wiring harness, you can see here, if you peel this boot back, it's attached right here with this clip. All you have to do is get a little flathead screwdriver, push in right there, and there's like a plastic tab on the inside, and that will depress that and allow you to pull the wire harness off of its mount. Having a little flathead screwdriver like this one's made by Steel, the chainsaw company. This is my favorite tool. I'll link to this, of course. I use this thing nonstop. I've talked about it in so many videos, but I mean, you can see it comes in so handy for so many things, whether it's separating clips like that, wire harnesses. I use it as a scraper. I use it for everything. And also, by the way, if you're fighting with any of these PCV hoses, anything not coming off, remember a lot of them are on like plastic type of nipples, and you don't just want to yank on them, you want to twist. And if it's still not coming off, you can take some silicone spray it in there, and then that will, with some twisting, that'll help it come out. Okay, so I started at the front, disconnecting things up here, moved my way towards the back, got all these clamps off, took out the bracket from the intake manifold, and now you can see that you can pull back on this wiring harness to get to that very last bolt right. Can you kind of see it right there? Now you can pull that back and you have access to that bolt. What you can do is you can even have a buddy hold these back, or you can jam something up against them to keep them back. But this is the way to do it. You will struggle and fight, I've done it, if you don't just kind of disconnect these things to have access to that back bolt. So now you're gonna have to play with your extensions, wobble sockets, make it easier. You can see I've got a deep wall 10mm wobble extension to my ratchet to get back there. And you do have to push back on these electrical harnesses and hoses, just push them back to get your socket down on there. And then as you're getting ready to finish taking that bolt out, it would be real easy for it to fall out and drop back behind the engine. So I've got my telescoping magnetic pickup tool attached to that bolt right there for when it comes out. I'm just gonna lift this up and try pulling it forward. Yeah, there's definitely something attached back there. So now that I pulled the intake manifold forward a little bit, you'll see that there's this wire harness that you can reach back here and just feel around for the clip to undo it, but that's it. Now you just wanna lift up on this as you pull it out so you're not dragging the gaskets up against anything. Okay, so now that that is off, we have access to our intake valves. If you want to clean your intake valves, now's the time. You're right there. The other thing is, there's the starter. So A lot of people complain like, oh, it's so annoying that engineers put the starter in the valley of the engine. But honestly, it sounds worse than it is on this vehicle. On this vehicle, like what does it take, an hour to get this stuff off, to get to that? It's not a big deal. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stuff some shop towels into each one of these ports. You do not want anything falling down into there. And you can use painter's tape across the top. You can stuff something in there, but you definitely want to have some insurance against stuff falling down in there. Along those same lines, I'm gonna take my shop vac now and just vacuum out everything down in here to minimize the risk of debris falling down into those cylinders. I'm going to inspect the high pressure fuel pump bucket now. It resides inside of here. This is the high pressure fuel pump. All you have to do with the intake off now, it's real easy to get this thing out. It's just these two 12mm nuts. As you can see, I've been in here before. I got torque stripe on here. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Some people have had luck getting this thing out of the vehicle without taking off the intake manifold by disconnecting this fuel line, but the manifold is right here. It's so hard to get to. I struggled with it last time. I wasn't able to get to it without taking off the manifold. But some people have been able to do it, so more power to them. Some people even take these studs out. I tried that last time and broke one, so that turned into a whole thing. Would also highly recommend that you put on some safety glasses while you do this, in case there is any fuel that sprays out of there. There shouldn't be. It might just dribble a little bit, but just in case, safety glasses. You do not want a chemical burn. And on the back side, this hard line has to come off. It's a 19mm. And then there's a wiring harness right here on the front. You can get to the tab with like a small screwdriver there on the side. This hard line here also has to come off, because if not, it hits this hard line. So I'm not gonna mess like with trying to squeeze it by there or take out these studs. I'm just gonna disconnect this. You will need a new gasket for in here, but we do have a kit, a loose overland, that includes a new O-ring for inside the pump, the bucket, and this fuel line crush gasket. And it is a 21mm. Okay, with the fuel pump out, we can get in here with needle nose pliers and we can grab the center stem of the bucket and pull that out. Let's take a look at this thing. You know, look at the bottom of it. See that circle there? So we've got some heat evidence, maybe a little bit, but no scoring. This bucket looks perfect. So now that you've got the pump out, the bucket out, you want to inspect down in here also. Take a look at the top of your camshaft. Look for any wear. There probably won't be, because it's a harder material than the bucket itself. But the thing is, what you want to check is the oiling hole. That's what can lead to a lot of problems if it gets plugged up. So frequent oil changes, I'm talking 5,000 miles with full synthetic oil, will really help out, because there's this little tiny oiling hole that makes a big difference in this thing overheating and wearing. It is right at the front, right there. You really have to clean this up. It's right there. I know you can't really see it. It's too small for a pick. I'm gonna put a piece of fishing line. It's very small, this oil hole. I'm sending fishing line down in it just to make sure it's nice and clean. It's right at the front. It's tiny. It's kind of a design flaw, honestly, because that's easy to plug up and then the bucket's not getting lubricated. There we go. So I sent that fishing line down there. This is probably like, it's pretty thick. I'm gonna guess this is like 15 or 20 pound test that I went down in there. So didn't think you need fishing line for this repair. So now I'm gonna put this back together and back in the vehicle. I am gonna replace the bucket. Even though mine looks really good, no obvious wear, we do have some heat marks on it. And you know, I just don't know, like, is there a certain number of heat cycles that are gonna start to affect it? Or is this thing just good forever once you've got that, if that oiling hole is clear and it's the upgraded part, which this was. I replaced this 55,000 miles ago and it looks great, but I'm gonna replace it anyways. I'm not gonna risk the health of my engine over, you know, an extra few bucks. Like, it's not a lot. This is the kit you need. We put this together for you at lusooverland.com. We also have these on eBay. And inside, you're going to get, these are all genuine Nissan parts. You're going to get the bucket. You're going to get an O-ring, which is going to seal it right here. So we're going to replace that right now. And then you're going to get your crush washer gasket for the fuel line. So let's start with taking a pick around this old O-ring, taking that off. When installing O-rings, you want to use just a tiny bit of lubricant, like some silicone, for example. This one, I'm really not that worried about. It doesn't have to stretch very far. It doesn't have to, but when you go to seat it on the housing, you don't want it to get pinched. You don't want it to roll or anything like that. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit of silicone on it. I suppose you could also use motor oil. So we're going to roll that O-ring into place. Very easy. It's not a tight fit or anything like that at all. So that's done. Okay, so let's drop the new bucket in there. I like to coat it with a little bit of new motor oil. It is a pretty tight fit. So I can just slide down in there. Just like that. I'm going to put just a little motor oil down in here, help lubricate things. And we can put our pump back on. We can start our nuts. Make sure this fuel line is out of the way. We can start to bring these down. Just want to do it evenly. There we go. I'm not going tight with the impact. Just want to make sure this fuel line is going to connect. Start that. Okay, we're going to torque these two nuts to 16 foot-pounds. So not a lot. You don't want to break this aluminum housing. Gonna go ahead and torque this to 31 foot-pounds, and that's gonna crush the new sealing crush washer. And don't forget to come down in here and reconnect your wiring harness. And then this nut on the back side, I'm using a crescent wrench, so just snug. I'm gonna come in here and apply some new torque stripe. This is just basically some kind of bright wax, so you can easily see if any of your nuts or bolts have come loose. Intake manifold time. Mine was not that dirty. I just swabbed the inside of each one of these passages, and that's all I got out on all 8. So not dirty at all. And this is something that the catch can should be keeping cleaner than without it. And the first time I cleaned this was at 100,000 miles. I'm at 150 now, and it was much dirtier at 100,000 miles, and that was pre-catch can. And if yours is really dirty, this thing is just plastic. I think there's obviously you'll have to take the throttle body out, and I think there's an electrical sensor on the top. You can remove those. Then I washed this thing in a giant tub with degreaser, and I got this really long brush. I'll see if I can find it and link to it in the description. And it worked really well because you could send it down through this port, and then it would go way down in there. And anyways, but this time it's not bad at all. I just swabbed on the inside and hardly got anything. But these gaskets here, I replaced them 60,000 miles ago, and they're still pretty pliable, but I am going to go ahead and replace them. These rubber gaskets, they are pretty forgiving. If yours are original, I would recommend replacing them. But, my point is, let's say you put this manifold back on with new gaskets, and then you find that oh, I forgot something, I need to take it off.
that's okay. These gaskets are still going to be all right. It's not like some gaskets where they really are one-time use. Like once you torque them down and they get deformed to that setting and then you take them off, they may not seal again. These rubber ones are really forgiving in their design. So still super pliable after 50, 60,000 miles, but I am going to replace them because I got them. Just doing a final clean here, making sure I get all of the paper towels out of each intake hole and just cleaning everything off with some alcohol to make sure we have a nice mating surface for those gaskets. On goes the manifold, and the first thing you want to do is make sure that you get your wire harness in the back connected, and then you can start setting those bolts down to bolt the manifold down. In a telescoping magnetic tool like I'm using right there helps out a lot with that. Just getting them finger tight right now. More diagrams for you. As you can see, that intake manifold needs 73 inch-pounds on those bolts. And more importantly, there is a specific sequence that you want to follow for tightening them down. All right, gonna throw everything back together with the Airbox now. Just one thing I want to point out. This connector right here, you're not missing anything. Nothing connects to that. So don't dig all around trying to find out what in the world connects to that. Nothing connects to that. So ignore it. It'll drive you crazy if you're trying to find something. But now we're just going to basically have installation be the same as reverse. We're going to throw the Airbox back in. Just putting those fuel pump fuses back in here. Don't forget to do that. All right, I think everything's reconnected. Let's see what we got. All right, just walking around, checking for leaks. So I need to mention that according to the factory service manual, anytime you unplug the throttle body or if you manipulate the throttle plate by hand, you need to do a relearn. It's super simple. It just involves, starting the engine, letting it warm up to temp, and then turning off the car and letting it be off for at least 10 seconds. It's that simple. But so before you start revving the engine or going on a drive, you just want to make sure to do this.